Hello guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be making my 2018 Metro Division standings predictions. Now this is the second part of a 4-part series where I look at every single NHL division and predict where each team stands. We've already done the Atlantic Division, so the next step is the Metropolitan Division. Now, the Metropolitan Division was a really close division last season. I see that being the same type of situation this next season, where we see a lot of teams fighting for a playoff spot and a lot of teams being in the race. Now, if you watch the Atlantic Division standings predictions, you know that I predicted 4 teams out of the Atlantic to make the playoffs. So with the Metropolitan Division, I predict 4 teams to make the playoffs as well. But before I list my Metropolitan Division standings, I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about the teams in this division, and where do you think they'll place? Now, we're going to start off with the New York Islanders, the team that I'm wearing right here at number 8 in the division. I predict them to get 71 points this next season, a 9-point drop-off from last season, and simply because John Tavares left. Now, I don't think the New York Islanders are going to be as bad as people do expect, but I do seem to be a pretty bad team, really low in the standings at 71 points. I just don't see a lot improving from next season. The defense isn't all that great. The offense still is very solid, but the goaltending in Robin Lehner and Thomas Greiss, that's a no for me. Though with Robin Lehner, it will be very interesting to see how he rebounds. If he rebounds, of course, he came out this past offseason and came out about his mental issues with the Buffalo Sabres. And if he gets that cleaned up this next season with the New York Islanders, we could see a much better Robin Lehner and hopefully a much better goaltender for the New York Islanders. That will be their best outcome. Again, the offense is still very good, and that's never been New York's weakness, but that defense is just atrocious. Boychuk was absolutely crazy bad last season. Ryan Pulock is developing into a nice top 2 defenseman for them, but other than that, it's just not looking too good for them. And even though I think Matt Barzal can be a first-line center, I just don't see it immediately happening to where losing John Tavares is going to be that big, that small of an impact. I feel like John Tavares leaving is obviously a huge blow for them, but I don't know if Barzal will be able to recreate that production that we saw from him last season. So all in all, I wanted to say the New York Islanders would do better, but I just don't see it happening. I don't really like the goaltending tandem. The defense, I think, is going to be bad again. And while the offense might be pretty solid, there are some guys that might be traded at the trade deadline too. At number 7 in the division, I have the New York Rangers at 77 points. That's exactly how many points they had last season. And while I think that some things will change with the team, I think while the standings will be very similar to what we saw last season. There are some excellent guys on that offense, most notably Mika Zibanejad, and I really do love some of those core guys, but I don't know if they have a lot of depth there. Hopefully, they do create some youth there. Maybe Cheechel gets a chance. Maybe Elias Anderson starts with the team. They'll be a lot younger than I think they were last season, which will definitely help in that end. With that defense, I think Brady Shea will be very solid once again. Kevin Shattenkirk hopefully healthy for them, but the rest of the defense is kind of just ifs and buts. There aren't a lot of solid guys on that defense, and other than that top pairing of Shea and Shattenkirk, it doesn't get very good. With the goaltending, of course, you got Henrik Lundqvist. I see him being around with the same production that he had last season. He was insane most nights. I mean, he would get teams shooting it to him up to 50 times per night. That New York Rangers defense was really not good at all. Henrik Lundqvist was one of the main reasons why they weren't in the exact dumpster, and I feel like that will continue this next season. I still see Henrik Lundqvist being very solid, but not quite to his elite days. At this point, they're committed to the rebuild, so I don't know if there's going to really be too much change in the locker room and in the overall standings. They're in that middle area of the rebuild where you're going to start to see some more youth, but at the cost of more points. At number 6, this might surprise a lot of people, but I have the New Jersey Devils with 86 points. That's an 11-point drop-off than what they had last season, and I'm sorry, but I just don't really like New Jersey's chances. That offense is just too inconsistent for my liking. Nico Hischier will likely take another big step in the points production, but I just don't see Taylor Hall replicating what he did last season. I'm sorry. He had an absolutely brilliant MVP season last season, and he was way above any other forward on that team, so I don't know if that will really continue from him. He might have a little bit more of a down year, but I do see some guys improving, but a lot of their solid rookies and a lot of their solid young guys might have down years because they really were fantastic last season. Now, defense is kind of shaky in my opinion. There really isn't that many shutdown defensemen on their team. They do have some nice offensive guys like Sammy Vatanen and Will Bitcher, but I just see it in a group as really fringe top 4 guys that won't really make a huge impact. I see that defense being okay, but I just don't see it being playoff team caliber. On the goaltending side of things, of course, we got Corey Schneider and Keith Kincaid. One reason, Keith Kincaid will be nowhere near what he did last season. He had a great season in the New Jersey Devils and was their starter for almost half the season. I don't see that continuing with him. I see that as a career year last season. I feel like that won't be replicated this next season, which will obviously produce less points for them. With Corey Schneider, hopefully he'll be healthy. I don't know how good he will be when he's healthy, though. There is some concerns about him. Again, he's at age 32, so he is getting up there in age, so I don't really put too much trust in him to be that #1 guy for the future. Overall, I really do like New Jersey's future, but in the present, I do see them backing down a little bit, not being a playoff team, and being very far from it. At number 5 in the division, I have the Carolina Hurricanes at 92 points, that being 2 points out of the playoffs there. And I see Carolina having a jump there, but really the Jeff Skinner trade really broke it for me. I had huge hopes that Carolina would be a playoff team this next season. I really did have hope in them. But once that Jeff Skinner trade happened and they didn't really get any NHL players back from that, it kind of just blew it out of the water, blew my confidence out of the water. And right now, I do see them being a decent team, but just not playoff worthy. If they did have Jeff Skinner, I would be putting them in the playoffs. With that forward group, while I do see Svechnikov being very, very good in year 1, I don't know if he'll completely replace Jeff Skinner's production. If he does, that's a smart move for Carolina, but Jeff Skinner getting out of that team for what was a hopefully playoff team kind of blew that forward group out of the water. It did not give me the hope that it really needed. With that forward group, there are some concerns. Again, Victor Rask was put out indefinitely. That's a huge blow to Carolina, who doesn't even have that much center depth at this point, so it is going to be a problem for them. I think scoring goals will be a problem for them. They have some nice two-way guys, but just not that scoring punch that Jeff Skinner brings. Now, I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. That defense is absolutely loaded. Dougie Hamilton is an amazing defenseman. Slavin, great defenseman. DeHaan, great defenseman when healthy. Pesce, great defenseman. And at this point, they don't even need Falk. They want to trade him. That's how good this defense is, and I think it will be a top 5 in the league. Now, on to the bad parts. The goaltending. We got Tim Darling and you got Mrazek. 2 really coin flips. I think Scott Darling is a lot better than what he showed last season, but is he really in Carolina? Can he really be a starter? Who knows? Peter Mrazek is the same type of goaltender. He was really shaky with Philadelphia and Detroit last season, and it really was not a great fit there. So can he be better in Carolina? Who knows? Really. It is a giant toss-up with the goaltending. 2 guys that I think have starter potential, but just haven't fully realized that. And while I really want to put Carolina in the playoffs because I do like their team on paper, that goaltending I think is just too shaky to really put them there. And of course, that Jeff Skinner trade just really did it for me. I feel like they'll be a decent team at 92 points. That's very solid, but I don't think they'll be able to make the playoffs. Well, the team that I put at number 4, I have the Philadelphia Flyers with 97 points being a playoff team in that first wildcard position. I think Philadelphia will be very solid, and I think they'll be around what they did last season. That's really only a 1-point difference from last season where they got 98 points. I still think that Philadelphia is a very solid team. I do see some players even being better next season, but again, that goaltending just isn't there yet. The forward group is pretty outstanding to say the least. While I don't think Couturier will put 100 points up next season, I still think he'll be very solid. Couturier could probably put up more points next season as well. I mean, Nolan Patrick was very underwhelming last season, and I feel like this next season we'll see him finally break out. There's a lot of good solid assets on that forward group, and I think it could get even better next season. That defense, while pretty young, is very, very solid. Gostisbehere is amazing. Ivan Provorov is probably the most underrated defenseman in the league. He's fantastic, and next season we'll likely see another jump from him. There is some concerns about the depth on the defense. I mean, Hag is decent, Sanheim is decent, but there's not really too much else besides Provorov and Gostisbehere, so there are some concerns there, but it is young, which will hopefully result in some mistakes, but likely some great potential. But the main problem with me is that freaking goaltending. Every single time, Philadelphia, it's the goaltending. I don't think it's going to change next season. I don't see Elliott's at, age 33 getting much better. It's just not going to really happen. Mikael Neuvirth is 30 years old, which makes me feel old, but he's not getting any younger, so I just don't see the goaltending being all that great, and while the defense is solid, I don't know if they'll be able to recoup that loss because of that goaltending. I still think they're a playoff team, and I still think they're a solid playoff team, but I think that goaltending might just run up to them. At number 3 in the division, I have the Columbus Blue Jackets with 98 points, just 1 point ahead of the Philadelphia Flyers. Again, I see that being a close race next season, and Columbus and Philadelphia will likely be very close. But again, I see Columbus being a very solid playoff team. Even if they trade Bobrovsky, I still think they'll be pretty solid. I know that's a hot take, but I do believe in guys like Korpisalo. Their GM, Jarl Kekalainen, has said on record that he's not going to trade Artemi Panarin. We'll see how truthful he is on that, but right now I am going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Panarin is one of the best wingers in the league, I feel, and he was amazing last season. And if they keep him, that's really all it takes. I feel like keeping Panarin for a possible playoff run is going to be huge for them. But last season, how many players on Columbus had down years? It was crazy. Tons of players had terrible years. And besides guys like Pierre-Luc Dubois and Artemi Panarin, Seth Jones, really most of the team had down years on the skater side of things. So I feel like a lot of those players will be a lot better. Guys like Wenberg, guys might be a lot better. Atkinson, healthy and a lot better. There are some great players on this team that I think are getting underrated, but had down years, and I think will be a lot better next season. And the defense, I could gush about Seth Jones for literally my entire life, but I've already spoken about him so many times. Werenski is a fantastic young defenseman. They got some great guys. Marcus Univara is very underrated. Zavar is a very good shutdown guy. Really, that defense is very solid. I think it's one of the more underrated defenses in the league. And behind Bobrovsky, they do get a lot of credit there. And on the note of Bobrovsky, it really is going to be a situation of where he gets traded. Is he going to get traded? Is he going to be let out? Or are they going to go for a playoff run? That really is the big question there. But if they go for a playoff run with Bobrovsky, I feel like that's going to be very good for them. But with Jonas Korpisalo, if Bobrovsky ends up getting traded, I don't think that's a bad option at all. I feel like he'll have a breakout this not really elite potential, but I do see him being a very solid starter next season if Bobrovsky were to get traded. And again, while there are big questions on which players will get traded, if they're going to get traded, Panarin and Bobrovsky, probably the best two players on Columbus there. There are some big questions with the team, but if it all goes well, if they do keep those players, I think they'll be one of the better solid teams going into the playoffs and could make a playoff run. At number 2 in the division, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins with 101 points. That was a 1-point increase from what they had last season. And last season was really a weird season for them. They had a bad first half. They were looking to not make the playoffs, but in that second half, they looked very solid. So I feel like this next season, hopefully we see a little bit more consistency on their part. And of course, I think they're going to be a playoff team. Of course, with that forward group, you got Sidney Crosby, you got Evgeny Malkin, you got Phil Kessel, Patrick Hornquist. You got a very solid core there. And while I don't see Phil Kessel replicating that season, Malkin probably not replicating that season, I think they'll still be very solid all around. Some of their depth guys could step up. We could see Sprong putting in a big role next season, and overall that forward group will still be very solid. And on the defense, I can't really defend a lot of those players. Chris Letang has just progressed so much defensively. Brian Dumoulin is a solid guy. Of course, you got Schultz, who's a solid guy with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Really, they got top 4 defensemen, but I don't think Chris Letang is that top 2 guy anymore. Maybe on the offense, but I don't think that the Pittsburgh defense has really been their strength throughout these few cup runs. But I do see it being a little bit lesser than it was last season, which was already pretty bad. But to supplement that, I feel like Matt Murray will be a lot better than it was. I don't think he can be much worse. Of course, he did have the passing of his father that last season, which was a big factor in his play. And I feel like having that addressed, having that done with, I feel like this next season we'll see Matt Murray being a lot better for the Pittsburgh Penguins and hopefully being a much better goaltender. And with the process of elimination, you know, at number 1, I have the Washington Capitals. I predict them to get 106 points, which is a 1-point increase from what they had last season. And of course, the Stanley Cup champions going into this next season want to repeat that and want to get back-to-back, and I feel like they'll have a solid chance to do so. I feel like in the regular season, though, they'll still be a very solid team, and of course, winning your division is no easy task. Some people might say, oh, there's a Stanley Cup hangover with them. They won't have the drive to win anymore. I don't really see that with Washington, at least in the regular season. They might go down early in the playoffs, but we'll see for that. I think in the regular season, they'll be right around what they were last season, and some things even improving from last season, which they had improvement last year. Of course, that forward group is still fantastic. You got Ovechkin, you got Kuznetsov, Nicholas Backstrom, TJ Oshie, some great guys on that forward group, and I see that continuing. While they don't have a lot of depth on that team, they did show that in the playoffs. I don't know if we'll see that in the regular season, but I don't know if it'll be that much of a worry to be concerned about. On that defense, while there were some guys that had career years, I do see some players improving. I mean, Orlov can be even better. I feel he has great potential. Madison Bowie could factor into this defense next season. That defense is very solid, and while I don't see it as an elite defense, it's good enough to make the playoffs, and it's good enough to win a division. But the main thing that I see improving this next season, the Washington Capitals, is Braden Holtby. In the regular season, he was just straight trash. Like, I hated Braden Holtby this past season just because he was just so bad. But in the playoffs, he was a lot better, was able to really find himself again, and of course win the Stanley Cup. I feel like he'll have a lot of confidence. I feel like he'll be very, very solid. And for the Washington Capitals, they need that. They don't really have a backup. I mean, I got Phoenix Copley, but really they're going to have to rely on Braden Holtby, and I feel like he'll be up to the task. But again, for the 2018 Stanley Cup champions, I don't see much changing. They're going to win the division, and I feel like that'll be the case. So, I want to hear from you guys. What do you think about my prediction and the Washington Capitals winning the Metro Division once again? And of course, I want to hear from you as well. What are your predictions, and who do you think will win the Metropolitan Division? But that's what for today, guys. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you like and subscribe. Again, tell me below what are your predictions, and what do you think of my predictions as well. I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.